This week, allegations of sexual misconduct that date back decades surfaced against Alabama Senate candidate Judge Roy Moore. Top Republicans took back endorsements and cut off fundraising efforts for Moore. Alabama's special election is on December 12th, and with the GOP now holding a slim two-vote majority in the Senate, what happens in Alabama could determine the fate of tax reform and the rest of the Trump agenda. Joining us now, Senator Chris Van Hollen, chair of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. Congressman, Roy Moore has flatly denied ever having any improper relationship with teenagers. Sean Hannity asked him about some of the specifics on Friday. Here it is.
Do you remember dating girls that young at that time?
Not generally, no.
But you don't specifically remember having any girlfriend that was in her late teens even at that time?
No, I don't remember that, and I don't remember ever dating any girl without the permission of her mother.
Senator, your reaction?
Well, Chris, I think Roy Moore is unfit for office, but this is going to be a decision, obviously, for the people of Alabama. And the good news for the people of Alabama is they have a clear alternative in Doug Jones, who grew up in Alabama. He became a prosecutor. He's focused on jobs. He's focused on increasing people's wages. He's focused on the things people in Alabama care about, and he's running a good campaign. So I'm not going to get into all these details because it's the people of Alabama who are going to decide. But those who have, people like Senator Bill Cassidy, obviously withdrew their endorsements. So let's let the people of Alabama decide. But the good news, as I said, is they have a great alternative in Doug Jones.
Wait, let me ask you, what do you think now? The polls have tightened considerably. What do you think are the chances that the Democratic candidate, Doug Jones, will actually win in the deep red state of Alabama? And what about the notion that is being discussed of, with these new revelations, the governor of Alabama postponing, delaying the special election next month?
Well, Chris, Doug Jones, again, is talking about all the issues that are important to people there in the state of Alabama. His focus has been on economic issues, kitchen table issues. So, look, we all know that Alabama is a very tough state politically for Democrats, but this is a special situation where we have a great candidate. On the other hand, you have a very, very flawed candidate in Roy Moore, which is why many people are calling upon him to step down. But I'm going to leave this to the people of Alabama. This is their decision. They're getting the facts now, and they need to make a decision based on the records of these two candidates.
One more question on this subject. From the president to Senate Republican leaders, a number of them are saying that Moore should step down if the allegations are proven. Here is fellow Alabama Senator Richard Shelby.
It's a devastating, nasty story. If the revelations, if that's true, I don't believe there'd be any place for him in the U.S. Senate.
Is that reasonable? I understand I don't want you or expect you to get into the specific allegations, but is that reasonable when you have allegations that date back, in some cases, almost 40 years? Let's see some proof.
Well, again, people like Senator Bill Cassidy looked at the facts, and we know what conclusion he drew. My view, Chris, is that Roy Moore was really unfit for the Senate even before these recent revelations. For example, there's ample evidence. This was also reported in the Washington Post, very detailed reporting, that he essentially cheated a charity that he was involved in for his personal private gain. So, again, there are lots of facts out there about these issues, and the people of Alabama will make up their minds. But I hope they will look at the facts because you've got a candidate in Doug Jones who has been sticking to the issues that people really care about, issues about health care, issues about tax policy that's going to impact the people of Alabama, educating the children in Alabama. Those are going to be the important issues, and I think Doug Jones has shown that he's a candidate who has a record that can actually help Alabama, but that's up to the state to decide.
Understood. Let's talk about this question of allegations. and allegations, particularly of sexual misconduct, which often can't be proven one way or another. It's going to end up being a he said, she said. Let's take the case of Bill Clinton, for instance. As you well know, there were allegations of sexual misconduct, even rape, against Bill Clinton. Democrats nominated him, elected him president. There was strong indication. Bill Clinton basically admitted that he had lied to the country about his relationship with Monica Lewinsky, and yet Democrats fought his impeachment. Is there a double standard here?
Chris, I don't think there's any double standard here. You're also talking, in this case, as you know, about allegations of child sexual abuse. We know what the allegations are. The people of Alabama will have to look at the facts, search their conscience, and make a decision. So I think that's always the case when you have revelations like this. But the bottom line is that Doug Jones is focusing on issues like health care and the fact that you saw a Republican Congress try to take away people's access to affordable health care. And he's talking about having a tax code that actually works for working people instead of a giveaway to big corporations and the super rich.
As long as we're, and this is, I promise, my final question in this regard, Senator, as long as we're talking about allegations, a jury in New Jersey is right now considering not allegations but charges of political corruption against Democratic Senator Bob Menendez. If that jury convicts him, not allegations, but a conviction, should he step down?
Chris, we're going to leave this decision to the jury, and I'm not going to get ahead of the game. People on the jury will look at the facts, just like people in Alabama will have to look at the facts, and they'll have to render a decision. And I'm not going to speculate about what the outcome of that jury decision will be.
You, as we pointed out, are the chair of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee. Democrats had a very big night Tuesday, sweeping elections, the governor's race in New Jersey, the governor's race in Virginia, down ballot as well. Here was Virginia's new governor-elect, Ralph Northam.
Virginia has told us to end the divisiveness, that we will not condone hatred and bigotry, and to end the politics that have torn this country apart.
Senator, is there a national message in the vote this week?
There's certainly a message in the fact that you had a huge grassroots turnout in these elections. And it's not just that the Democratic won the candidate in Virginia, the governor's race, but the size of that margin and the scope of the victories, and victories across the country, including in Georgia, New Hampshire, Washington State, even some mayoral races in my state of Maryland. So it's that scope that showed really huge motivation and turnout. The question, of course, is whether that will be sustained. And I can tell you, a lot of people were really upset that Donald Trump and Republicans tried to take away their access to affordable health care. And they're going to be really mad if they try and pass this huge giveaway to big corporations that's going to be paid for by millions of middle-class families. So those are the kinds of things that are going to keep people motivated to come out.
Well, let's talk in the time we have left about the tax plan, and let's talk first of all about the middle class. The vast majority of low and middle income Americans do not itemize their deductions. Doesn't doubling the standard deduction, doesn't that benefit? I mean, I certainly pointed out, as you heard me with Chairman Brady, that there are some people who are going to be hurt, but doesn't doubling the deduction dramatically help most low and middle income voters?
As you know, Chris, while they doubled the standard deduction, they also took away, with the other hand, the ability of people to take their personal exemptions for themselves and dependents. And when you wash that all out, the reality is that many families, many middle-class families, are going to end up paying more, especially when you take away people's ability to deduct their state and local taxes. And the folks in the suburbs are going to get clobbered. As you mentioned in your earlier segment, the New York Times analysis, and they used, I believe, software from a more conservative group, concluded that almost half of middle-class Americans would actually be paying more. And they've looked at the Senate bill and concluded about a third of middle-class taxpayers would be paying more under the Senate bill. So that's why Paul Ryan, Speaker Ryan, and Mitch McConnell this week both had to walk back their statements where they had earlier said that there wasn't going to be any impact on middle-class taxpayers. In fact, millions and millions of middle-class taxpayers are going to pay more so big corporations can pay less. And folks in the suburbs are going to be particularly clobbered.
All right, let me ask you, I got one last question, and it has to do with this issue of corporations. And you know, the Democratic line, and I've heard it from you, I've heard it from Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, this is a giveaway to big corporations. But you certainly have to agree that the U.S. corporate tax rate, which is 35%, which is, no question about it, the highest in the world, what's wrong with lowering it to 20%, which puts it in line with other industrialized nations in the world? What's wrong with making us more competitive? Won't that boost those corporations, boost growth, boost wages, boost jobs?
So a couple things, Chris. First, you know that the effective U.S. corporate tax rate is much lower. Some people put it around 20% because corporations take a lot of these deductions. But we could do corporate tax reform, but we should do it in a way that doesn't boost the national debt by $1.5 trillion and still ask millions of middle-class taxpayers to pay for it. Do you know about a third of stockholders are foreigners, right? So you're now asking middle-class taxpayers to finance tax relief for people who are foreign stockholders. Corporations in America are making record profits. Wages are pretty flat. This notion that somehow we got to give another big tax break to corporations and it's going to trickle down and lift wages is disproven by what we're seeing right now. And in fact, as you know, the CEOs from around the country have been reporting that they're going to use that extra money for stock buybacks in their shareholders. So at the end of the day, this is a proposal where middle-class taxpayers in suburbs and other places around the country are going to be paying for the tax cuts of big corporations. That's just not right.
Senator Van Hollen, thank you. Thanks for your time this week, and always good to talk with you, sir.